All right, well, kind of quick calibration point. So Bishop Barris said his vision, articulated his aspirational goals for us. Hopefully we took away the importance of parish pastoral councils in achieving those goals, not just for the Diocese of Allentown, but for all of our parishes. And thank you, Monsignor James and Schlert, for helping to ground us in ecclesiology so we have a little more knowledge as to how we should go about doing this. Now that word how, right? So before we jump into that, which is bringing some folks up here that have been there in the trenches or willing to share their insight and experiences on actually establishing pastoral councils, let me first take a little walk down memory lane, because there's some things to learn by looking backwards, right? So we heard earlier, Second Vatican Council is really where the idea started, and they were recommended, and they were called parish councils. There wasn't, in all honesty, a great deal or a great detail of information on really how to go about doing that. And so parishes that did implement parish councils had varying degrees of success. And to a large degree, pastors would indicate that it was more of a painful process because it actually created tension and conflicts in some parishes. And so there was a lot of learning that occurred in those early years as we were trying to go about doing this. Early on, what we saw is parishes that were establishing councils that were like governance councils, board of trustees, board of directors, and for lack of better direction, many of the lay people that were called to serve thought that they had a role in really governing the parish. And there are certain undesirable side effects when that occurs. So then we went kind of the other pendulum, right? There was some clarification in canon law in 1983 that referred to pastoral councils. The term parish council kind of stopped. You didn't see it anymore. Now you're pastoral. We need to focus more on the spiritual, pastoral health of the parish, which was the original intent. But then we saw kind of more advisory roles that were idea generation groups that were giving the pastors, in some cases, laundry list. Hey, here's the great things we need to do in our parish, Father. You know, A, B, C, D. Go get it done. Thank you. Of course, you know, now having worked with pastors for a number of years, there's not a lot of room on their plates, right? And so the dynamic, the relationship between pastors and lay faithful that are called to serve in these pastoral councils became a very important topic for a while. A lot of people were researching, a lot of people were trying to figure out what works. And truly the statement that a consultative role, when the members of council fully understand that that is their role and that the pastor presides, was most effective. And St. John Paul II, around 1988, when he noticed people were still kind of struggling with that dynamic, dedicated a whole chapter in Christa Fidelis Laici. So I'm talking 1988 now, we're still trying to figure this out, where it was the co-responsibility of the lay faithful in the church of mission. And he said, in the context of church mission, the Lord entrusts a great part of the responsibility to the lay faithful in communion with all other members of the people of God. We heard Bishop Barris articulate that in a number of ways, even some concrete examples earlier on. Okay, makes sense, right? Yeah, we got it, okay. But he went on to say, indeed, pastors know how much the lay faithful contribute to the welfare of the church. They also know that they themselves were not established by Christ to undertake alone the entire saving mission of the church, but they understand that it is their exalted office to be shepherds of the lay faithful, and also to recognize lay faithful services and charisms that all, according to their proper roles, may cooperate in this communion with one heart. Sounds very clear then, right? So the pastor is the shepherd, the lay faithful work with the pastor in a collaborative role. Great. Still need the how-to, right? And so as Monsignor ended with one in mission, that's kind of what Bishop Barris has set forth for us to operate with. More than just the intent, more than just the vision. Some prescriptive ways that within the parish communities we could go about working collaboratively to achieve this mission. We're not going to walk through one mission today, so don't be afraid that we'll never make our time if we do that. But it is an important reference document. Monsignor Slurk called out the sections. There's the norms, right? So the norms, the standards. These are important. These are things that every parish pastoral council has to adhere to because they're intended to drive consistent outcomes. And that's the goal, consistent outcomes. But there's this recognition, and Bishop says this all the time, every parish has its own identity, its own uniqueness. There's no one size fits all to this. So working together, the chair people, the pastors, need to figure out how do we apply this within our parish, and really that is kind of the marching orders they have going forward. So a few key points of emphasis. The pastoral councils are not intended to supplant the role of the pastors, right? So the pastor presides, even to the degree where if a pastor is not present, there's no council meeting, okay? So that's important to understand. This notion of no two parishes are identical is absolutely true. They may seem on the surface, but there's unique cultures that are part of every parish. There's histories, there's traditions, there's things that make a parish tick. And the parish pastoral council is really chartered with engaging all of the faithful in that community to understand how can we proceed in enhancing the vibrancy of the parish. How could we make the parish more spiritual, more pastoral, so that we can achieve those goals of evangelization with a bias for action. The third bullet, the effectiveness of the pastor in providing leadership may be the single most important success factor. Not to put a burden on you pastors, but there's reality in that, right? It is the situation where understanding all this and implementing this, working with your council, allowing them to contribute in a collaborative way, but making sure you provide the guidance to keep them on track and, not to go off the rails. It's a very important role. So it is important that everyone really takes this in the serious nature that it's intended to be. And finally, and you'll hear this theme resonating, reaching out to inactive Catholics, helping bring them back to the church. I'd like to elaborate, too, when we talk about parish pastoral councils, that parish outreach is more than just lost souls. It's more than just communities, engaging in volunteerism with soup kitchens and the like. It's reaching out to other parishes. Some parishes are blessed with many gifts, many resources, many volunteers that can contribute in a fairly robust way. Many parishes are not. They're limited in their resources. But working together, reaching out, if they invest together into establishing a ministry, sharing their resources towards that common goal, very good things can happen. We're much stronger together when we work together as parish communities towards that same vision. So finally, kind of wrapping up here, I wanted to talk a little bit about this notion of appointments versus elections. Because when you go back over time and even look in current reality, this is a topic that gets a lot of traction, even at the council priest meeting when Bishop was listening to his advisory council on what they thought about one in mission and what it would need. Elections versus appointments was a hot topic, and for good reason, right? Because the critical success factor is that the membership of the pastoral council gets this, right? You here today have an opportunity to hear directly from our lead shepherd, Bishop Barris, as well as from people that are going to share their stories. And it's important that as you onboard new members, that they get the benefit of that as well. Thankfully, Rick's here recording this, so we're going to have that, and there's plenty of reference documents that you're going to hear. But they'll all need to hear the message. They'll need to understand the role, the level of contribution. And what's important then is when you decide how to go about bringing those members in, not only, as Bishop said, that you get the entirety in terms of the representation of every aspect of the parish community, but you have to have people that really accept this consultative role, that accept the goal that the focus is the spiritual health of the parish. Pastors have finance councils to help them with the financial situation. Yes, they must work together. They have to understand the affordability of what they can do or not they could do if they have to invest in ministries. But it really is a spiritual basis. So it's important that as you go through a discernment process and you identify candidates for the council, that those that are ultimately appointed are the right membership. If you focus on the elections, you can have special interest groups. You can have people that have maybe a primary ministry that they have an affinity to, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. But the council as a whole has to achieve its purpose. No one individual can take a priority. Okay? So, with that in, and without much further ado, how about if we bring on Father Phil to kick it off so we can start beginning to understand how pastoral councils were implemented in parishes and learn from those.